Hi everybody, and welcome back to Alfred's Basic Adult Christmas Piano Book Level 1. This video is Lesson 2, and we are going to cover page 4 and 5 today. We Three Kings of Orient are. And at the top of page 4 it says use after middle C position, page 42. So this is if you are using the Alfred Basic Adult Lesson Book Series Level 1. You want to make sure that you are familiar with the middle C position. So that's found on page 42 in the book. The middle C position is just a really awkward position to be in. It is shown in the diagram here at the top of page 4. And so we know where middle C is on the piano because often when we play in the C position, that's where our right hand goes. I should say not often, always. But in the C position, your left hand is down here an octave lower. But in the middle C position, both thumbs share middle C. Now, it says here both thumbs on middle C, but they're not giving you all the details. It's really difficult to, just darn right impossible to play both thumbs on middle C. So what you actually have to do is have one thumb on middle C and the other thumb sort of hovering slightly above it. Now, which thumb is on middle C, that will actually change throughout the piece. So if you look at We Three Kings of Orient are, there on the very first line, the first middle C you play is in the right hand, the treble clef there on the second measure. So when you start the piece out with the middle C position, you're going to want your thumb in the right hand on middle C and the thumb in the left hand to sort of be hovering above it. Now when you get to the third measure, notice the bass clef. Your left hand plays a middle C there on beat 2. So you're actually going to be switching it out. And now your right hand thumb is going to be hovering. So really, for the middle C position to work effectively, you're going to be switching out, back and forth. Now, I've seen it happen many times, and in some cases, I would say this is okay what if, you accidentally play it with the wrong hand? What if I go ahead and play it there in the third measure with my right hand? So, auditorially, if you do that, and it doesn't affect the music in any way, then that's okay. But if I wouldn't make that a habit because if you might get lucky with it, but it just may get confusing in many ways. One, following along in the music. Two, sometimes it might have to do with the fluidity. If you look at measures 2, 3, and 4, where the bass clef is, throwing that middle C in with your right hand kind of interrupts a certain fluidity of all those notes there in those measures that are all in the left hand. So it's sort of helping keep a fluid motion. So in the end, I'm going to say, go ahead and let's stick with what the music's calling for. If it shows the middle C in the treble clef, hit it with the right hand. If it shows it in the bass clef, do it with the left hand. Now, if it happens on accident, like I said, it's not the end of the world. It's okay. But refrain from making it a habit. Don't do it on purpose. Now, we may go through this piece today, and I may see a spot where I feel like, hey, it makes sense to do it there, or it's okay to do it there. But I will say, just from looking at the first line, let's not. So we'll see, how it goes. But for the most part, I'd like to just follow exactly what's on the page. So again, when you start the piece, your right hand thumb is on middle C. Your left hand thumb is actually going to be above it. Now, this piece goes back and forth between the hands. There's only one spot, and they're saying it's optional, and that's at the bottom of page 5. At the very end of the song, the last two measures says small notes optional. So there in the treble clef, there's an F in the second to last measure followed by an E. And that's sort of just an optional harmony. That's the only time in the piece where the hands are going to play together. Your left hand's finishing up the melody. But otherwise, the hands are never playing together at the same time in this piece. It's just back and forth. So I'm saying that because that's how we're actually going to tackle this. Usually we do right hand, all the way through, and then we do left hand all the way through, and then we put it together. Doing that in this case is just going to chop it up so much. Like I said, it's all melody, so it wouldn't make sense to chop up the melody like that. So we're actually going to look at hands together. So the first line, notice, in addition to our hand position, we have 3 beats per measure. We're in the key of C major, so there are no sharps or flats. And I'm scanning the piece, and there are no sharps or flats even written in, so everything's going to be white keys. You're going to be playing all the notes that you see in that diagram. So you're never going to go beyond this middle C position. You're never going to extend beyond an F down here in the bass clef with your 5th finger and a G up here in the right hand with your 5th finger. The first line also repeats. Notice there are 2 verses, different words. So we're actually going to play that first line twice. Rhythmically, this piece is very easy. The smallest note value is a quarter note, and the largest is a dotted half note. And there are plenty of half notes there. So your rhythms are either 1 beat, 2 beats, or 3 beats. That's pretty easy as well. So we'll kind of cover rhythms as we go along here too. We'll kind of just cover it all. So at the very beginning, 3rd finger on E is our first note. And that is for 2 counts, half note there, followed by D with your 2nd finger. And I'm actually going to move my left hand out of the way a little bit for this video so you can see more clearly what my right hand is doing. So you won't move your left hand thumb this far out like I am. It'll actually be above, but I need to move it so you guys can see. So once again, E for 2 counts, followed by 2nd finger on D for 1 count, and then middle C with the right hand. Now, like I said earlier, the hands never play together at the same time until the very end. That means when the left hand plays, the right hand is off that middle C. So rests are very important. Like I said, this is all melody, so you wouldn't have someone holding the word kings if they're singing it while singing the word of, right? So rests are very important. So on beat 3 of the 2nd measure, 3rd finger on A in the left hand. 2nd finger on B in the next measure. And this is where we have our little switch. The thumb is going to catch that middle C in the left hand. So your right hand thumb comes up. You go back to B, and then the last measure, 3 beats on A. And then the entire line repeats. So back at the beginning, we're back to 2 counts on E. Now notice I went ahead and switched my right hand thumb to C. You don't have to wait to the note to do the switch. In fact, if you're in a position where you can do it sooner, that's better. It's always better to be prepared or be in place ahead of time. So the last measure, had 3 counts. There's a good opportunity there to go ahead and make that switch if you want. It's a recommendation that can help, but doesn't have to be. Only if you feel it works. So explore that. The beginning, we're back to E for 2 counts, followed by D, middle C with the right hand for 2 counts, switch to left hand, A, B, C, B, and then A for 3 counts. Now when we get to measure 5, we're back to the right hand on middle C for 2 counts, and again on beat 3. Next measure, go up to D for 2 counts, D again on beat 3, and then E for 2 counts, and again on beat 3. Notice the pattern in those 3 measures: half note, quarter note, half note, quarter note, half note, quarter note. Each measure going up a note. C, C, D, D, E, E. Now the next measure can sneak up on you. There's no F. It skips all the way up to G. And then on beat 2 is F. Beat 3 is E. Top of the next page at measure 9, D. Back to E. D again. And then measure 10, the left hand takes middle C for 2 counts, followed by B for 1 count, and then A for 3 counts. Now measure 12, we have our first and only harmony until we get to the end of the piece. So remember, harmony is 2 or more notes. So this isn't a chord, it's just a harmony. A chord is 3 or more notes. You have a G in and a B. Now the A that you played in the previous measure, measure 11, was the third finger. Think about your fourth finger and your second finger. They are right there for G and B. Now your fingers may be a little weak. They may not be able to just automatically just go right down and play that G and B. You might be thinking, let me switch to some stronger fingers. No, piano is about developing our weaker fingers and make them stronger. So in the end, all 10 fingers can be used and utilized on the piano. So if you go to that G and B and feel resistance, that's okay. Practice that. Practice getting that solid sound. They're both together. So that's for 2 counts, and then your right hand on D, and then you're back to your left hand on middle C in measure 13 for 2 counts, and then a quarter note on beat 3, the next measure. 2 counts again on middle C, skip down to G. So that's a big jump there, biggest jump yet. From C all the way down to G, that is a 4th down. Also happens to be your 4th finger. Then you go right back to middle C in measure 15 for 2 counts. Now, in measure 15, it goes to A, not G. So don't expect C, G, C, G. No, it's different. C to G in measure 14, C to A in measure 15. And then back to middle C for 3 counts in measure 16. The second line is a repeat. So your right hand's getting a break right now. Measure 17, same thing. C for 2 counts, and then on count 3, and then 2 counts. Down to G for 1 count, back to C for 2 counts. A for 1 count, and then C for 3 counts. On the next line, measure 21, you've got middle C in the right hand. We switch for 2 counts, and then on count 3, and then 2 counts on D, and then E on beat 3. Next measure, 2 counts on F, and then E on beat 3, and then the last measure, 24 on that line, D for 2 counts, and then E on beat 3. Measure 25, the bottom line, we're back to left hand on middle C for 2 counts, and then again on beat 3, and then the next measure, 2 counts, the 4th down to G. Now small notes optional, but let's take these. So like I said earlier, the left hand has the melody in the last 2 measures. So your left hand on measure 27's got middle C, your right hand has the 4th finger on F. And the F is 3 counts, while the left hand middle C is 2 counts. Go to the A on beat 3. Keep this F grounded with your 4th finger. Don't lift it. The last measure, you're going to come back to C, and your left hand is going to go to E. That creates a nice little ending there. So of course it's optional, you don't have to, but it's nice to have that for the ending, I think, that little harmony. The words are "thy perfect light," so I mean it's kind of cool that that harmony in a way is kind of like bringing in some light through the music effect. So I like that. So that's pretty cool. So overall, that's pretty basic. I mean, in many ways, this is easier than the previous lesson. The hardest thing actually about this lesson, I think, is just the awkward hand position. Our hands are very, very close. Almost too close for comfort. But that's something that's really good to get comfortable with, because piano sometimes does that, and eventually you can get to pieces where your hands cross over, or they actually play in between one another, depending on the effects needed. So this is a good practice for that particular technique. Now, looking throughout the piece dynamically, you start with a mezzo forte at the beginning, and it will stay there. When you get to measure 13 on page 5, the second line, you kind of go into the chorus of this piece, but it's soft actually. Piano right there. And it's going to get mezzo forte again measure 21. And that's it. So your entire piece is mezzo forte, average volume, except for the 2 lines on page 5, starting at measure 13 through measure 17. So in the end, contrast, it's basically loud versus soft. But be careful your loud isn't bangy. So it's a mezzo forte. It's not a forte. But you certainly want that contrast. We want to hear the difference between loud and soft. So now I'm going to go through the whole piece and play it for you. And then remember, this book has duets, so there's a duet part, and we'll get to that in just a second. But let me give a count off, 3 counts, and I'm just going to go through and play this piece for you. It's a moderate tempo, so it's not slow, but it's not fast. And I'll throw in the dynamics as well. Notice all the slurs, so this is meant to be played very smoothly. Again, what I said earlier about switching back and forth between the hands, notice I did not recommend anything outside of the middle C's that they have written. So I think what they have written, which hand takes middle C, will go along very well with the indicated phrasing, the slur markings, so playing it smooth. So let's start at the beginning, and I'll give you 3 counts, and then we'll go. So here we go. 1, 2, 3. Let me stop. I did something wrong. You may notice. So again, it's even throwing me off. The right hand thumb, you want to have that on middle C. So I did not have that. Now I could have made the switch very quickly, but for you guys there, I want to make sure that you do get in that habit of already having that there before you start. All right, one more time. 1, 2, 3. Now notice there's no retard there at the end. If you want to put in a retard, I think that's fine, actually. It feels like there could be one there to signal the end of the piece. One thing I noticed, especially when you get to measure 13, but a little bit of this in measure 5, 6, and 7, the rhythms of this piece are very, very repetitive. You basically, it's kind of like a waltz. 3 beats per measure usually signals a waltz. But more specific, you've got half note, quarter note, half note, quarter note. It's very easy, I feel, to get lazy with that and start playing everything at the same. But that's not what it is. You need to definitely feel 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And on the other hand, you don't want to be too quick on the quarter notes. Those are almost like 8th notes at that point. So how to fix that? Simple. It's the steady count. Count, or use a metronome, steady 3 counts. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. If your count is steady, and it's steady when you're playing these notes with the count, you can't miss. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So be very deliberate and exact with that. It's very important in this piece to do that. So again, make sure you're not lazy with that. It can get that way. So I noticed that when I was playing, that it can get that way. So we don't want that at all. Otherwise, that covers the piece except for the duet. So at the bottom of page 4, the duet part. Student plays 1 octave higher. You can if you want. Now, remember, middle C position's right here on middle C, so 1 octave higher, just take your thumbs up here. And you'd be playing the exact same thing, but just up here. Now, you'd have to do that if we were playing together in person, because my part is right here, which I'm actually on middle C here, so obviously it'd be impossible to do it together. But since we're doing it virtually, you can choose to do it here or where you've been playing it. Honestly, you can do it anywhere you want. Now, if you do it down in this octave where I'm playing, they kind of will get muddied together in the sound. So explore that. This may sound fine, but up here, the sound is actually very distinct and separate from down here. So that might still be a good option, but I'll let you decide. So I like to record it very slow at first, a very, very slow tempo. And I may count out loud. I may come back in and out, especially in the long notes. It's easy to get track of counting. So in some of the long notes, I may count. I'm playing sometimes the same rhythm you're playing in my part. Other times, my part's busier. For example, look at measure 5 in the duet part. Measure 5. I have eighth notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and... Your part does not have eighth notes, so don't be surprised when we get to measure 5 and you're thinking, oh my goodness, he's speeding up. No, I'm just playing more rhythms. We both keep the steady 3 counts and we will be together. Okay, so I can probably play measure 5 as an example to do both parts so you can see how it fits. So your part is here. So that's 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and. Now don't worry about you counting the ands. I'm just doing it because my part's got the eighth notes. But together in measure 5, it would sound like this. So you can see how that works together. So both of us still have steady 3 counts. So I'm just bringing that up so that doesn't throw you off. Also at measure 21, my part gets busier down there too. All right, so now I'm going to do it first at the very slow tempo. Okay, so I'm just going to count the numbers. I'm not going to do the ands. I'm just going to do the 1, 2, 3. But I'll give us 3 counts before I play. So 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, and repeat. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, All right, so hopefully you didn't get lost there. If you did, and because this is the slower version, although I didn't play it that much slower than it will actually go. If you did get lost, it probably means you might need to keep reviewing your part. One thing that's helpful, if it's the counting that you got lost with, not the notes, but the counting, it's always good to go through and write in the counts. Now, this isn't a very complex piece, so you just have 3 beats per measure. Don't worry about the ands. Again, just the big numbers, 1, 2, and 3. But I would write those in the middle of the measure underneath the notes. So in measure 1, that's a little tight there with the lyrics written inside the measure. But the reason you want to write the count inside the measure, because outside the measure, above and below, is where the fingers are, excuse me. You don't want your counting numbers and your finger numbers to get mixed up, because that can get confusing real fast. So squeeze the counts in there. around the lyrics. But in the first measure, you know, write 1 and 2 underneath the half note, and then put a 3 directly underneath the quarter note. So don't just write 1, 2, 3 anywhere, but try to line it up with its notes. Now I try to write number 2 halfway between the number 1 and the number 3 in that measure. That way I don't risk going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. It reminds me to count 1 and 2 evenly. All right, now, the faster version, like I said, really isn't that much faster, but we will pick up the pace some. So hopefully you're comfortable with it at this point with the slower tempo, and you're ready to do it at the performance speed. So now at the performance speed, I'm not going to count out loud. I'll give us a count off, but this way you can enjoy it without me counting underneath it, and make some good music together. So here we go. 1, 2, 3. All right, well, I hope you had fun with this piece at this point. Like I said, the biggest challenge is playing in the middle C position. It's not one we see too often, but occasionally, like I said, we will encounter moments where the hands are very tight, and that's something that we need to get comfortable with as a developing pianist. So otherwise, I don't expect you to spend too much time on this piece, so hopefully you get to have fun with it, enjoy the duet playing, and as always, I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson.